They never aged, they never died, but no one ever told you how they started. The Lost Boys didn't just happen. They were created by something darker hiding in plain sight. You know, the leather jackets, the motorcycles, the boardwalk. You know David's icy stare. But what you don't know, what the movie never really explained, is how these boys became vampires in the first place. Where did their powers come from? Why didn't they just kill Michael? And who was really pulling the strings? Today we dig into the secret vampire rules, the unseen hierarchy, and the twisted truth of the real head vampire hiding behind a smile. Michael didn't become a full vampire overnight. It started with a bottle. In that iconic scene, Michael drinks from a wine bottle handed to him by David. It wasn't just wine, it was blood, David's blood. That act marked him. But that's not enough to fully turn. The rule: you're one of us now, but you haven't made your first kill. That's what makes it final. Drinking blood makes you half vampire. Only killing someone seals the deal. Until then, you're stuck in limbo, stronger, faster, hungrier, but still human enough to save. This sets up the main hook of the story. Michael is hanging off the edge, literally and figuratively. Let's go deeper. This isn't just some modern-day bite and run. The Lost Boys followed a ritual. Here's how the transformation works in the Lost Boys universe. Step 1. The invitation. You're welcomed in, usually at night. You feel accepted, part of something wild. Step 2. Blood, sharing. You drink the blood of a full vampire. It may be in food, wine, or directly. Step 3. The test. Your body begins to change. You can fly. Your strength grows, but your hunger never ends. Final step. The first kill. Once you take a life, you lose your humanity. You become one of them forever. That's why Michael and Star are both in danger, but not lost yet. Now here's the part the movie never spelled out, but it changes everything. Max didn't just want Lucy. He wanted Michael and Sam too. His plan wasn't just to replace David. He wanted to turn the whole family. Think about it. What's scarier than a gang of vampires? A vampire family hiding behind a white picket fence. This was Max's challenge. How to blend vampires into the suburbs. He needed Michael to fully turn. He needed Lucy to be their mother. And once that was done, there's no telling how far the vampire web could have spread. Let's talk about the ending, because it ties the whole origin story together. The Lost Boys die one by one. Sunlight, holy water, stakes through the chest. But the real climax is when Max walks in, all smiles, and reveals the truth. Don't ever invite a vampire into your house. Everything that happened, all the terror, the manipulation, the near turning of Michael, was orchestrated by Max. He was the puppet master, and the Lost Boys were his tools. And if Grandpa hadn't shown up with that truck, Michael would have made his first kill. Lucy would have joined Max, and Santa Carla would have become a vampire town. The movie never tells us where Max came from. Was he hundreds of years old? Did he survive earlier vampire wars? Did he turn David to replace someone he lost? That mystery is intentional. Horror is scarier when it's incomplete. And the Lost Boys leaned into that darkness. What we do know is this. Max created David. David created the Lost Boys. And they lured others in with charisma, rebellion, and a taste of freedom. Santa Carla was never about vampires. It was about control, hidden beneath punk music, neon lights, and youthful rebellion. Let's break it down. Vampires in the Lost Boys are made through blood and manipulation, not just bites. Michael was only a half vampire because he hadn't killed yet. Max, the head vampire, was behind everything. The Lost Boys were pawns in a bigger plan, to build a vampire family. The movie never shows where Max came from, making the horror feel ancient and hidden. And that, maybe, is the scariest part. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to unpack the origins of Max the Head, vampire in the Lost Boys. Subscribe for more horror content. What if I told you David never died? The antlers missed his heart, and the real story of the Lost Boys is much darker than the movie ever showed us. Tonight, we're going to dig into the hidden origins of David, the true king of Santa Carla. We'll uncover how the collapse of the Hudson's Hotel in 1906 cursed the city forever, how David became tied to that curse, and how his bloodline gave birth to Shane Powers, the alpha vampire of the tribe. By the end of this, you'll never look at the Lost Boys the same way again. We all remember the scene. Michael impales David on a pair of mounted antlers. The camera lingers, his face frozen in shock, and then silence. But think about it. Did you notice what didn't happen? David never imploded. He never burned. He never turned to dust the way vampires usually do. When Max found his body, it wasn't shredded or mangled. It was perfect, untouched, almost preserved. Here's the truth the movie never told us. The strike missed his heart. It punctured his lung, sure, but it wasn't the kill shot. And when Max died, the chain of command broke. David didn't perish with him. He was freed. But without a sire to anchor him, David became something else entirely. A rogue, immortal. A vampire no longer bound by the rules of his bloodline. But to understand why David survived at all, we need to go back decades earlier. Santa Carla, 1906. The Hudson's Hotel collapse wasn't just some tragic accident in a small coastal town. It was sabotage. A coven of vampires had already claimed the city as their personal feeding ground. They preyed on travelers, sailors, and tourists, the kind of people no one would come looking for. When the hotel crumbled into the earth, it wasn't a natural disaster. It was a cleansing fire, a mass sacrifice meant to bury their crimes and fuel something far worse. The ruins became a ley-line crypt. The ground beneath Santa Carla was soaked in blood, the air heavy with the whispers of the dead. Shadows clung tighter in that place. Every scream and drop of blood spilt there didn't vanish. It lingered, waiting. And in the middle of all this, there was a boy. David wasn't always the leather-clad vampire king we know. He was human once. Born in the early 1900s, the son of a family that had traveled west during the last great push of the American frontier. His father worked the rail lines. His mother, a quiet woman of European descent, carried with her old world superstitions, tales of blood drinkers, night spirits, and curses. David was only a teenager when the Hudson's Hotel collapsed. Some say he lost his entire family that night, trapped in the rubble, alone, dying in the dark. When he was found, it wasn't rescuers who pulled him free. It was the Coven. They saw something in him, his stubborn will, his hunger for survival, his anger at the world for taking everything away. Instead of killing him, they offered him a taste of something eternal. And David, broken, grieving, furious, accepted. That night, David became one of them. But he was never like the others. The collapse tied him to the curse in ways even the coven didn't understand. The blood-soaked soil of the Hudson's ruins became his cradle, his anchor. Decades later, when he and his Lost Boys claimed the hotel as their lair, it wasn't coincidence. He was returning home. The curse of 1906 had latched onto him the moment he was reborn, tethering his soul to something older than even he could comprehend. David wasn't just a vampire. He was a survivor of Santa Carla's original sin. After the Hudson's hotel collapse of 1906, David wasn't the same boy who went in. The coven that turned him didn't treat him as family. To them, he was just another soldier in their endless war against humanity. But David was different. He wasn't content to follow. He was clever. He watched, learned, and adapted. While others fed like animals, David studied people. He learned how to talk, how to manipulate, how to make others feel like they belonged, even when he planned to use them. Through the 1910s and 20s, he haunted the railroads and coastal towns of California. He ran with drifters, gangsters, and bootleggers during Prohibition. He learned the thrill of motorcycles from outlaw clubs rising after World War II. Every decade shaped him, molding his fashion, his style, his taste for rebellion. By the 1960s and 70s, David had grown into a true predator. Where most vampires stayed hidden, David turned nightlife into his hunting ground. He blended with counterculture, the bikers, the punks, the rockers. To them, he wasn't an outsider. He was the leader everyone gravitated toward. He didn't just take blood, he took loyalty. But Santa Carla always pulled him back. The curse of the Hudson's Hotel wasn't just a memory, it was an anchor. No matter how far he traveled, he always returned to the crumbling ruins on the edge of the coast. And when he finally gathered his Lost Boys, Dwayne, Paul, and Marko, he brought them there. To them, it was just a hideout. To David, it was sacred ground. The place that made him. The place that would never let him die. By the time the Emerson family crossed his path in 1987, David wasn't just another vampire. He was the product of 8 decades of survival, style, and manipulation. A boy who lost everything in the ruins of Santa Carla, who rebuilt himself as a king. Fast forward to the infamous bonfire scene. David and the Lost Boys descend on a gang of surfers, ripping through them in a frenzy of fire and blood. But one of those men wasn't just a random victim. His name was Shane Powers. Already the leader of the Nazi surfers, Shane was ruthless, violent, and power-hungry. David saw something in him. Instead of killing him outright, David made a different choice. He let him taste the blood. He let him change. Shane became the first true child of David's bloodline. Michael and Star resisted. Laddie was halfway turned. But Shane embraced it. And here's the terrifying part. Shane wasn't loyal like the Lost Boys. Where David craved family and belonging, Shane craved power, domination, control, fear. When David vanished, Shane didn't just survive, he rose. He twisted David's dream of family into his own nightmare of violence. That's how Shane became the alpha, we meet in The Lost Boys, the tribe. Here's the problem nobody in the sequels really talks about. Santa Carla isn't cursed just because it's a bad town. It's cursed because David never left. Every vampire outbreak in that city traces back to him. The tribe wasn't a random gang. They were living proof of his legacy. David is the ghost king of Santa Carla. Even asleep, his influence spreads. The Frog Brothers thought they were fighting new monsters every decade. But in reality, they were fighting David's shadow. So where is he now? Some say his body still lies in the ruins of the Hudson's Hotel, sealed in the darkness. Not dust, not dead, waiting. Every drop of blood spilled in Santa Carla, every scream that echoes through the caves. All of it feeds him. One day he'll wake up, and when he does, he won't just be the David we remember. He'll be something older, something shaped by that 1906 curse. Not a vampire, not a man, but an elder, a god of the coast. Behind the bleach blonde hair and devil-may-care smile, Paul wasn't always the playful lost boy you think you know. His past hides pain so deep, it makes his transformation into a vampire feel less like damnation and more like freedom. In today's video, we're digging into the heartbreaking and shocking vampire origins of Paul from the Lost Boys. Unlike the others, Paul's story begins in the picture-perfect 1950s. White picket fences, the smiling American dream. But inside that home, violence, cruelty, and a boy desperate to escape. Stick around, because Paul's road to becoming a vampire is one of the darkest yet most liberating stories in the Lost Boys universe. Paul was born in 1940, the youngest of 3 brothers, in a wealthy Florida suburb. From the outside, his family looked flawless. His father a successful car salesman, and his mother a picture-perfect housewife. They had money, fancy decor, the latest gadgets. Neighbors envied them, but that was just the mask. Behind closed doors, Paul's world was chaos. His mother had a violent temper, often lashing out physically. His father screamed until the walls shook, tearing Paul down at every turn. His twin older brothers, the Golden Boys, talented, praised, and merciless when it came to bullying Paul. Paul was never normal enough for them. He had ADHD before anyone understood what that even was. He fidgeted, interrupted, showed emotions his parents thought were embarrassing. So, they punished him. At school, teachers slapped rulers across his palms. Kids laughed. At home, his parents took away toys, locked him in his room, and beat him for the smallest mistakes. Paul wasn't living. He was surviving. At just 8 years old, Paul tried to run away. With nothing but a lunchbox full of toys, he wandered until he found train tracks. Trains were his escape, his dream of getting away. But when a train barreled toward him, his foot got caught. He screamed. And then, a miracle. A greaser on a motorcycle swept him up seconds before the train hit. This stranger wasn't like anyone Paul had ever met. Leather jacket, cigarette hanging from his lips, powerful bike rumbling beneath him. To Paul, he was the definition of cool and kind. He bought Paul fries and a milkshake at a diner, played games, let him dance to Good Rockin' Tonight. For a few short hours, Paul felt alive. Before Paul's parents dragged him home, the greaser gave him a silver bracelet, a token of friendship, something Paul kept for the rest of his life. But instead of gratitude, his parents raged. Rock and roll was devil's music. Motorcycles, for hoodlums. They punished Paul harder than ever. From that point on, he wasn't just unhappy, he was trapped. The only thing that gave Paul hope was music. Late at night, he'd steal his brother's record player and sneak into the basement. Rock and roll became his lifeline. It was loud, wild, and free. Everything he wasn't allowed to be. But when Elvis Presley appeared on TV, his brothers mocked him, his parents exploded, and his punishment became even worse. They stripped his room bare. No books, no posters, no toys, just a bed, 4 walls, and misery. Paul thought about ending it all. That's how deep the abuse had cut. Then came the turning point. Paul got detention one night, and while walking home in the dark, he bumped into 3 boys, David, Marko, Dwayne. They looked like they'd stepped out of his dreams. Leather, rocker style, rebellious. They took him to a diner, fed him, danced with him, laughed with him. For the first time since that greaser by the tracks, Paul felt seen. They promised to come back. And they did. Night after night, they snuck him out through his window. They gave him jewelry, showed him makeup, took him on wild bike rides. Paul wasn't just living anymore. He was alive. He even had his first kiss with Marko. And though his parents would have called it sinful, Paul didn't care. For once, he felt love. But his parents weren't done. They caught him with the boys, dragged him back, and planned to ship him off to military school to crush his spirit for good. Panic consumed Paul. And then chaos. His lost boyfriends revealed their true nature. Fangs, yellow eyes, monsters, maybe. But to Paul, they were angels. They slaughtered his abusive family. While David held Paul close and shielded his ears from the screams, Paul was finally free. That night, Paul made his choice. He didn't see vampires as monsters. He had already lived with real monsters. His parents. He drank David's blood, sealing his fate. His first hunt was poetic. Back at the train tracks, he chose his victim. At first, he hesitated. Could he really kill? David reminded him. The world was full of cruel people. Why not take one less monster off the earth? Paul gave in. His instincts took over. He killed. And for the first time in his life, he smiled. A real smile. That night, Paul went wild. He broke into hotels, smoked weed, drank, danced naked, sang at the top of his lungs, and made love for the first time. He wasn't the broken little boy anymore. He was free. He was reborn. From then on, Paul became the playful one of the Lost Boys. The joker, the dancer, the singer. His ADHD now embraced. His love for music, unstoppable. His kindness, unmatched. He vowed never to cut his hair short again. Never to be silenced, never to be trapped. He found family in David, Marko, Dwayne, and later Star and Laddie. He became the older brother he never had. Paul wasn't just a vampire. He was proof that even in the darkest stories, freedom can come from the unlikeliest places. Paul's story is one of tragedy, rebellion, and ultimate transformation. From a boy beaten down by the perfect lie of the American dream, to a vampire who finally found joy, music, and love in the night. And that silver bracelet? The one given to him by the greaser who saved him as a child. He wore it forever. A reminder of the moment he first realized there was life outside the cage. If you thought Paul's origin was dark, Wait until you see the twisted story of Fright Night. They called him silent, but silence hides secrets. What if the most mysterious lost boy had the darkest past of them all? Tonight, we pull back the curtain on Dwayne, the long-haired vampire who stood at David's side but never spoke more than a whisper. He wasn't just muscle, he wasn't just background. He was the still water in a storm of chaos. And if you've ever wondered who he really was before Santa Carla, before the boardwalk, before the blood, this is the story you were never told. When you think of the Lost Boys, most people picture David's smirk, Star's rebellion, or Max's manipulation. But Dwayne, he lingers. He doesn't speak. He doesn't crack jokes like Paul. He doesn't act wild like Marko. He's the ghost within the gang, a presence that says more with silence than others do with words. In the movie, he's never named. Only the credits call him Dwayne. But sometimes it's the unnamed who have the richest stories buried under the sand. Dwayne was not born anywhere near California. His dark skin and sharp features hinted at Latin roots. But the truth ran deeper. He grew up on a native reservation, wired up blood in his veins, forever caught between two worlds. The heritage of his ancestors and the modern America that never fully accepted him. From the beginning, he was an outsider, a quiet soul who discovered early that fists solve nothing. But that didn't stop trouble from chasing him. In a world where survival often depended on strength, his silence made him a target, and his strength made him a shield. Legends tell of him skateboarding down back roads, keeping to himself, carrying the weight of siblings he once protected. This explains why, even as a vampire, he showed a paternal edge, especially with Laddie, the youngest of the pack. So how does a man like that, quiet, protective, reluctant to fight, end up riding with David's murderous circus of the damned? The trail points back to Max, the so-called head vampire, hiding in plain sight as the smiling video store owner. Max wasn't just selling VHS tapes and rewinds. He was building a family, a vampire dynasty that could live forever in Santa Carla. David was his chosen leader, his prodigal son. But David couldn't build an empire alone. He needed soldiers. That's where Dwayne entered the picture. It was the late 1970s, long before Michael and Sam Emerson ever set foot in Santa Carla. The boardwalk was alive with neon, punk bands screaming through cheap amps, kids skating until sunrise. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Dwayne, a loner riding the edges of the boardwalk crowd, more shadow than man. Max saw him for what he was, strong, quiet, unanchored, a young man without a tribe, walking the world like a ghost, perfect prey, perfect soldier. One night, Max approached him not as a predator, but as a father. Promises of belonging, promises of brotherhood. And in that moment, the walls Dwayne had built around himself cracked. All his years of silence, of holding back violence, of protecting others, finally turned inward. Max was the one who turned to him, not David, not Marko, not Paul. It was Max's blood that sealed his fate. A gift or a curse, depending on how you see it. And with that, David's gang had its quiet enforcer. Max secured a second in command for David to lead the pack of lost boys. Dwayne didn't resist. Maybe he saw immortality as an escape from a world that had never welcomed him. Maybe he thought silence could shield him from the monster inside. But when his eyes opened, red with hunger, and his soul was bound to the night. He knew there was no going back. From that moment on, Dwayne wasn't just a man anymore. He was Max's insurance policy, David's muscle, the still water that ran deeper and darker than anyone could imagine. Watch closely, and you'll see it. Dwayne is the only lost boy who truly steps forward to challenge Michael in that first standoff. He's not a clown like Paul. He's not a trickster like Marko. He's the wall, the barrier, the one who stands between prey and predator. And yet, contradiction drips through his actions. In the opening fight on the carousel, when David taunts a man and chaos breaks out, Dwayne pulls back. He doesn't throw the first punch. He doesn't dive headfirst into violence. He wears the mask of a fighter, but deep inside, maybe that old human reluctance still flickered. Here's where things get complicated. Dwayne didn't just fight for David. He obeyed him, even when it came to Star. Notice how Dwayne is the one who blocks Star from leaving with Michael. He doesn't argue, doesn't speak, just stands firm, expression carved from stone. Was this loyalty, fear, or something darker? The idea that once turned, Dwayne no longer had a choice. And then there's Laddie. Out of all the boys, Dwayne was the one who showed him kindness, calling him Bud, letting him ride with him. If David was the leader, Marko the wild card, and Paul the reckless joker, Dwayne became the reluctant father, the silent guardian to a child dragged into darkness. But silence couldn't save him. In the final battle at the Emerson house, Dwayne's loyalty led him straight into the trap. He storms the house with the others, rage burning after Marko's death. Then it happens. Sam lines up the crossbow, fires an arrow through his chest. It pins Dwayne to the stereo, sparks flying. Electricity surges, his body convulses, and in one of the most spectacular vampire deaths of the 80s, he bursts into flame. Music, electricity, and blood mixing into one violent end. The silent soldier goes out not with a whisper, but with an explosion. Dwayne's story doesn't end in that living room. His silence left a mark. Dwayne was more than just the long-haired lost boy. He was the anchor of the group, the reluctant fighter, the protector of the youngest, and the victim of loyalty to the wrong master. His silence forced us to fill in the blanks. And maybe, just maybe, that's why his story keeps haunting us long after the credits roll. We've already explored Laddie, Marko, Star, David, Thorn, and Max, along with The Howling, Fright Night, and some of the most unforgettable cult horror classics of the 80s. If you love diving deep into these dark legends, make sure you subscribe to Horror Unfold, hit that like button, and share this video with fellow fans. And don't forget, tap the notification bell so you never miss the next chilling tale from the world of cult horror. Want more dark origins? Tap the next video on screen and uncover the secrets of the Lost Boys universe. What if the prettiest lost boy wasn't just another punk vampire, but the most tragic monster in Santa Carla? Marko's story hides something darker than the film ever shows. Tonight, we dig into the dark origins of Marko, the youngest, quietest, and most overlooked member of David's gang. On the surface, he looks like a glam rock angel. Curls, fur coat, the kind of kid you'd see in a band poster. But behind that smile hides one of the most disturbing transformations in the Lost Boys. And here's the twist. Marko may hold the key to the group's secrets, from the vampire lair itself to their loyalty to David. By the end of this video, you'll never look at him the same way again. Marko wasn't just another face in the gang. He was the youngest. His boyish features made him seem almost innocent, a dangerous trick that fits perfectly with vampire mythology. In old folklore, vampires often appear beautiful, even childlike, to lure victims closer. Marko is a perfect example of that myth. Unlike David, who commands attention, or Paul, who cracks jokes, Marko stays mostly silent. He doesn't need words. His cold stare, his small smirk, his presence at the edges of scenes makes him feel more dangerous. He watches, he waits, and when it's time, he strikes. Marko's look is unforgettable. Bleached curls, chains, and that fur-trimmed coat. He looks like a rock star who walked out of an MTV video straight into Santa Carla's boardwalk. But looks can be deceiving. That angelic style masks the fact that Marko is a predator. During the bonfire massacre, watch his face. While the others laugh and taunt, Marko barely shows emotion, almost savoring the kill in silence. That calmness is what makes him terrifying. And finally, when Marko does laugh during the bonfire massacre, it cuts through the chaos, sounding more demonic than human. And here's where folklore ties in again. Vampires weren't always fiery monsters. In many European legends, they were described as cold, silent, calculating, draining life while showing no remorse. Marko fits this mold perfectly. And in the vampire lair, Marko sleeps deeper inside the cavern than the others. It's not random. He hangs closest to David's throne, almost like a wolf guarding the alpha. This also shows that Marko was David's most loyal follower, his shadow, his protector. If David ruled the Lost Boys, Marko was his knight, and that makes his fate even more tragic. Marko's past isn't shown on screen, but the silence leaves room for the darkest truth. He wasn't always the fur-coated, angel-faced vampire we see hanging in David's lair. He was once a boy caught in the wrong time, in the wrong place, and Santa Carla devoured him. The year was 1983, long before Michael and Star ever stumbled onto the boardwalk. Marko was just 16, a runaway from a broken home in Los Angeles, drifting up the California coast like so many forgotten kids of that decade. The early 80s were a breeding ground for lost youth. Punk music blasting from every club, the streets alive with rebellion, and predators waiting in the shadows. Santa Carla was a magnet for the broken, and that's where David found him. Not on the boardwalk, but in the ruins beneath it. A boy with nowhere to go, his curls already marking him as someone too beautiful for the streets, too easy to be prey. But instead of preying on him, David saw something else. Potential. The story goes that David didn't just turn Marko out of hunger. He turned him out of design. He wanted someone who could lure, someone who looked harmless, someone whose silence and beauty would draw in victims like moths to a flame. Marko was perfect. The ritual was quick, brutal, and unforgettable. Down in the cave, Marko drank from the bottle, thick, red, alive, the same blood that bound Michael later. Only Marko didn't fight it. He wanted it. For a boy with no family, no protection, immortality wasn't a curse, it was a way out. From that night, Marko became David's most loyal creation, his youngest, his shadow, the boy who would hang closest to the leader's throne, not because of power, but because David had chosen him, shaped him, and twisted his broken youth into something eternal. And that's why Marko feels different from the others. He's not just a vampire. He's a child of the 80s punk scene, swallowed by Santa Carla, remade by David's blood into the perfect predator. His silence isn't emptiness, it's loyalty. Marko's death is burned into fans' memories. Edgar and Alan Frog stake him while he hangs upside down in the cave. The result? A blood explosion. Violent, messy, shocking. Why him? Why so much gore? His death was designed to be the most brutal, to show the audience that killing vampires comes at a cost. It's not clean. It's not heroic. It's raw carnage. And in vampire folklore, some stories claim the youngest vampire in a brood will die the most violently, as if the curse punishes innocence. That's exactly what happens to Marko. But here's the truth. Marko is the tragedy of the Lost Boys. He's the youngest, the most innocent looking, the one who says the least, and yet he dies the most violently. While David gets a quiet, almost noble ending, Marko explodes into blood and screams. That contrast makes him unforgettable. His beauty turned against him, his silence broken only by death. If Marko had survived, he could have become the next David, maybe even more dangerous, because he didn't need words, only loyalty. So what do we really know about Marko? He's the angel-faced predator, the youngest and most loyal lost boy, a vampire who embodies old folklore, hiding horror under beauty. His death is not just a kill scene, it's a symbol of lost innocence buried deep in the blood-soaked caves of Santa Carla. And that silence he carried with him, it echoes even louder after his scream. If you want to uncover the next chilling secret of Santa Carla, watch the video that just popped up on your screen. Everyone thought David died. But what if I told you David, the bleached-haired vampire leader from the Lost Boys, never actually died that night in Santa Carla? In 1987, the Lost Boys ended with Michael driving David through a wall of antlers. A perfect Hollywood death. But the truth tells a very different story. A story of survival, revenge, and a resurrection hidden in the shadows of Santa Carla. Tonight, we uncover what really happened to David after the Lost Boys movie. This is the untold truth you have been waiting to hear. The night was chaos. Michael and David, half vampire against full vampire. Michael, fueled by desperation, slams David backward, impaling him on a rack of deer antlers. Everyone thinks it's over. David gasps, his eyes go cold, and he slumps lifeless. But something is off. He doesn't turn to dust like the others. There's no fiery explosion, no collapse into ash. Just silence. And yes, the Frog Brothers does say, no two bloodsuckers go out the same way. Some yell and scream, some go quietly, some explode, some implode. But this line was intentionally left in the movie to mislead you on the true ending of David. Because the truth is, David didn't die that night. The antlers never pierced David's heart. He was wounded but not destroyed. Vampires in the Lost Boys universe don't die unless their heart is directly impaled. So after that battle, while the Emersons celebrated their victory, David's body lay motionless in the ruins, slowly healing. Days passed. The blood on his chest dried, his body cold. but his heart still beat faintly, deep in his chest. And then he woke up. David regenerated, his body knitting itself back together. He crawled out of that wreckage, weak, starving, and filled with rage. The leader of the Lost Boys had survived, and Santa Carla was about to feel the consequences. David fled north along the coast, slipping through abandoned tunnels and forgotten highways, feeding on drifters night after night until his strength returned. Each kill brought him closer to what he once was, the confident and magnetic predator of the boardwalk. But this time he wasn't looking for fun. He was looking for power, and that's when he reunited with her, the Widow Johnson, aka the Black Widow. The Black Widow was one of the oldest vampires on the West Coast, a matriarch of blood who had survived countless hunts. Where David was chaos and rebellion, she was calculation and patience. She ruled from the shadows, turning the lost and broken into soldiers for her hidden coven. When David came to her, still scarred and reeking of revenge, she didn't see weakness. She saw potential. A fallen prince who understood pain, loss, and hunger. Under her wing, David began to rebuild. He gathered outcasts, punks, and drifters, the kind of souls no one would miss, and forged them into his new family. But this time, it wasn't about freedom or eternal youth. It was about vengeance. The Black Widow taught him patience, the art of waiting in the dark, striking only when the prey was blind to the danger. And together, they wove a plan that would haunt Santa Carla for years. So while the world believed the Lost Boys were gone, David was evolving. No longer a reckless vampire of the boardwalk. Now a king reborn in the Black Widow's web. Because monsters don't die. They adapt. Years later, the Frog Brothers, Edgar and Alan, had become full-time vampire hunters. But rumors started spreading again in Santa Carla. Disappearances, bodies drained of blood, signs of a vampire resurgence. David re-emerges, scarred, bitter, and burning with vengeance. He builds a new coven of vampires from the ashes of his old gang. They hide in the catacombs beneath the boardwalk, feeding on drifters and runaways. David is no longer the charismatic punk rocker from the movie. He's darker now, more controlled, less human. Every move he makes is part of a plan to rebuild his lost empire. But the Frog Brothers haven't forgotten him. They've been waiting for years, obsessed with the idea that David might still be out there. When they finally track him down, Santa Carla erupts into chaos once again. Vampires swarm the boardwalk. The Frogs and Sam Emerson team up for one final hunt. The battles are brutal. Underground tunnels, firelight, broken stakes, screams echoing in the dark. But David is no longer fighting for fun. He's fighting for revenge. And right when the frogs think they've killed him for good, David vanishes again. David escaped, wounded but alive. A ghost fading back into the shadows of California's coast. Imagine it, decades later. The neon lights of Santa Carla flicker again. A new gang of vampires rides in from the coast, wearing leather and silver, laughing like ghosts. And their leader? A man with platinum hair, sharp eyes, and that same wicked smile. Because legends don't die. They just wait to be remembered. David's story didn't end with a stake or sunlight. It continued in blood, vengeance, and myth. From a brutal fall in 1987 to his rebirth, David became something more than a villain. He became the eternal spirit of the Lost Boys. And in the world of vampires, the dead never stay buried for long. Watch the next video popping up now. We're diving into the hidden origins of Max and the widow Johnson, the dark story that explains everything behind David's rebirth. What if the most terrifying thing about the Lost Boys wasn't David, wasn't Star, but a child who was never meant to be a vampire at all? In today's episode of Horror Unfold, we're peeling back the shadowed layers of one of the strangest and most overlooked figures in Santa Carla's dark history, Laddie Thompson, a boy stolen from innocence, paraded as a missing child, trapped between human and monster. But the real horror isn't just what we saw on screen, it's what his story means. Because Laddie might just be the missing key to understanding how David's gang really worked, and why the Lost Boys were more than just a group of stylish killers. Stay with me, because once you see Laddie's story in full, you'll never watch the Lost Boys the same way again. Laddie Thompson was born on June 20, 1976. By the time the events of the Lost Boys take place in 1987, he was only 11 years old, a child. And yet, when we meet him, he's already a part of David's gang. But here's the chilling part. The very first clue we get isn't from him at all. It's from a milk carton. His face, his name, his status, missing child. That small detail, almost hidden in the background, tells us everything. Laddie didn't choose this. He was taken. He was ripped away from whatever life he had and turned into something he never asked to be. Unlike David, Dwayne, Paul, and Marko, Laddie wasn't a full vampire yet. He was something worse. A half-vampire. A creature on the edge of damnation, cursed with the hunger but not yet lost to it. Why would David want him this way? Well, Laddie was bait, a way to keep Star tied to the gang. She protected him like a mother, and David knew she wouldn't leave while Laddie's fate was still uncertain. And yet, we see resistance in Laddie. When Michael is pressured to drink the cursed blood, Laddie hesitates. He runs back to Star. In that small act, he shows more humanity than most of the gang ever did. But there's something even stranger. Laddie's last name, Thompson, is the same as Marko's. Coincidence? Maybe. But if it isn't, then the story grows darker. Was Laddie Marko's little brother? Was he taken as a way to break a family apart, turning one brother into a killer and the other into bait? If we look even deeper, the bond between Laddie and Dwayne in the film, the small nods, the unspoken affection, hints that even among monsters, someone still saw the child behind the hunger. And here's the problem at the heart of Laddie's story. What do you do with innocence when it's trapped in a monster's world? Laddie couldn't escape on his own. He was too young, too dependent on Star, too controlled by David's manipulations. The Frog Brothers didn't know what to make of him either. In their black and white view of the world, he was still a vampire, and yet not fully damned. That tension, that moral dilemma, is what makes Laddie one of the most disturbing characters in the Lost Boys, because he represents every victim who doesn't fit neatly into the category of human or monster. The climax of his story comes in the cave battle. As the gang is destroyed, Laddie begins to lose control. His hunger bursts out. His body twists with the change. For a moment, he is almost gone. But then Max dies. And just like Michael and Star, Laddie is free. His curse is broken. He's just a boy again, terrified, exhausted, but alive. The horror ends for him, at least on the surface. It sounds like a happy ending, until you think about it. Because what kind of man does a boy like Laddie grow into? A boy who once thirsted for blood. A boy who slept in a cave of corpses. A boy whose face was printed on milk cartons while his family searched in vain. Does that ever really leave you? Or does the hunger still echo deep in his bones? But the truth is darker than the films ever show. Laddie was never reunited with his family. By the time Max was destroyed, his parents were already gone, killed by David's gang in their feeding frenzy. That loss lit a fire in him. He wasn't content to simply walk away from Santa Carla. Instead, he joined forces with the Frog Brothers. The shy, watchful boy became their quiet apprentice. For years, he trained under them. He learned the rules of hunting. He learned how to drive a stake, how to recognize the signs of the undead, how to survive in a world where the line between human and monster is razor thin. Laddie hunted vampires across California, and some say beyond. He became the weapon David had never wanted him to be. Not prey, not bait, but vengeance made flesh. Yet the years of blood and hunting wore on him. The faces of the undead blurred with the faces of his family. Every vampire he killed was a reminder of what he had lost. And then he met her, the woman who would become his wife. For the first time, he saw a chance at life outside the shadows. Together they built a family of their own. Children, a home, a life untainted by fangs and blood. And so, Laddie retired. He hung up the stakes, walked away from the Frog Brothers' endless war, and chose peace over vengeance. But those who knew him say the hunter never truly left. They say he still wakes at night, listening for wings at the window. They say he teaches his children the signs of the undead, just in case. Because once you've lived in Santa Carla's darkness, you never forget it. Here's why Laddie matters. He isn't just a background character or a piece of trivia for die-hard fans. He is the Lost Boys' true legacy. Because through him, we see what they were really capable of. Not just seducing teens with leather jackets and motorcycles, but dragging children into their nightmare. Laddie is proof that the Lost Boys weren't just a gang. They were a sickness, a spreading curse that devoured the weak, the young, the forgotten. And when we remember Laddie, we're forced to ask, how many others like him were taken, changed, and silenced in the dark corners of Santa Carla? Laddie Thompson's story is more than just a footnote in The Lost Boys. It's the reminder that horror doesn't always come from the fanged smile of a vampire. Sometimes it comes from the quiet face of a child who was never given a choice. Watch the next video on screen, The Hidden Origins of Max and the Widow Johnson. What if I told you? The most mysterious character in The Lost Boys wasn't David, wasn't Max, wasn't even Grandpa, but Star, a girl trapped between life and death, love and blood, freedom and damnation. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on Star, the runaway who became a half vampire, the reluctant bait for David's gang, and the girl who risked everything to protect Michael and Laddie. Her story is darker than the movie ever showed, filled with abuse, betrayal, and the hunger she fought every single day. By the end, you'll understand why she was in Santa Carla and why her survival is one of the strangest tragedies in vampire history. Before Star ever set foot on the boardwalk, she was already broken. She had a father who wished she had never been born, and a mother who almost killed her, and scars that speak louder than words. With no home left, no love to keep her tethered, Star did what so many lost kids in the 80s did. She ran. Santa Carla wasn't just a town. It was a magnet for the forgotten, and she was one more runaway, sleeping on the beach until David found her. David didn't just stumble across her, he recruited her. At first, Star must have seemed like another lost soul to him, but she was more than that. She was bait, a way to lure others, like Michael, into the gang's orbit. But David never gave her warmth, never treated her like family. He showed her nothing but control. He slept away from her, ignored her, and the one scene where they interact, it's not love, it's power. David reminding her she had no real choices anymore. At some point, Star drank vampire blood. She was tricked, the same way Michael was, and from that moment, she lived in horror. She refused to feed on humans. She resisted the hunger, but hunger doesn't disappear. It grows. Every day she starved herself, it became harder to hold on. Imagine the temptation, walking the boardwalk at night, hearing every heartbeat, smelling the blood under every inch of skin. That's the world Star lived in. When she tried to leave, David played his cruelest card, Laddie, a little boy, innocent, helpless, also half-turned, just like her. If Star walked away, she'd abandon him to the monsters. If she stayed, she had to keep feeding her own curse. David knew it, and so did she. So she became Laddie's protector, his shield, his surrogate mother, the one person standing between him and full damnation. Then came Michael. On the boardwalk, she wasn't just a mysterious beauty. She was temptation wrapped in tragedy. She was bait, planted to lure him. But something changed. When Michael drank the blood, when he felt the curse spread through him, Star didn't push him deeper into the gang. She tried to pull him out. She warned him. She loved him. Their intimacy wasn't just romance, it was survival. Two half-vampires clinging to each other in a storm that could swallow them whole. And by the time the battle began at the Emerson house, Star was already caught in the middle. The Frog Brothers saw her and Laddie as monsters and tried to stake them. Forced into hiding, she held Laddie close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. When Laddie lost control, snarling and transforming, Star didn't run. She stood in front of him, begging the hunters to see. He's just a little boy. Later, when Max revealed himself as the true head vampire, Star fought back, attacking him with a lamp in a desperate move. It didn't work. He threw her to the floor like she was nothing. Only after Max died was she free. Her humanity returned, and she clung to Michael and Laddie as if she could hold them together with sheer will. After the Santa Carla nightmare, she tried to live a normal life with Michael, away from the shadows of the boardwalk. Yet fate is rarely that kind. Years later, tragedy struck. Michael and Star were killed in a sudden car accident, their story cut short before it ever truly found peace. But the bloodline didn't end with them. Their children, Chris and Nicole Emerson, would inherit the tangled legacy of their parents. And when the next generation of vampires emerged in the tribe, it was Chris and Nicole who found themselves drawn back into the same violent cycle of temptation, blood, and survival. Star may have escaped the curse of eternal night, but through her children, the story of the Lost Boys lived on, and the darkness followed. Star is more than a love interest, more than a side character. She's the heart of the Lost Boys. Think about it. Without her, Michael wouldn't have been drawn into David's world. Without her, Laddie would have been abandoned to the darkness. Without her presence, there would be no thread of hope, no fragile lifeline pulling the story back from pure chaos. But Star is also a tragedy. A girl caught between two worlds, too human to give in to the blood, but too bound by David's control to escape. She's manipulated, used as bait, forced into Michael's orbit, not out of free will, but because she was ordered to seduce him. That's not romance. That's a survival. Her very name, Star, suggests light, beauty, and guidance. But in Santa Carla, she was never allowed to shine. She was dimmed, suffocated under the neon glow of the boardwalk and the shadow of David's gang. She's a prisoner dressed like a queen, a runaway who traded one nightmare for another. And if you pay close attention, the movie itself tells you this. Watch her body language, watch her eyes. Star isn't carefree like the vampires around her. She's tense, guarded. Every look she gives Michael is half love, half fear. When she holds Laddie close, it isn't just protection, it's desperation. She's clinging to the last shred of innocence left in her world because she knows the bloodlust will eventually claim him too. Star isn't just the girl in a horror movie. She's the emotional compass, the one who reminds us that behind the leather jackets, the motorcycles, and the roaring soundtrack, this is still a human tragedy. She embodies the cost of David's reign, not just blood spilled, but freedom stolen. And in the twisted fairy tale of Santa Carla, Star becomes the silent glue holding the story together. Michael may be our hero, David may be our villain, but without Star, the story collapses. She's the secret heartbeat of the film, the lost soul who makes the nightmare mean something. And yet, her fate is cruel. We like to imagine she and Michael escaped happily ever after. But as the sequels reveal, their story wasn't a fairy tale. Their lives ended in tragedy. And it's through their children, Chris and Nicole Emerson, that her legacy carried forward into the Lost Boys, the tribe. If you want to find out how her bloodline survived, and how the cycle of vampires and hunters continued into the next generation, click the video on screen now. Max didn't find Lucy by chance. He heard her blood calling. In The Lost Boys, everyone remembers Michael's slow descent into vampirism, Sam's comic book bravery, and the Frog Brothers' war cry against the undead. But one character quietly holds the darkest secret in Santa Carla, Lucy Emerson, the loving mother who almost became the vampire queen. Today, we're peeling back that hidden layer. The truth about who Lucy really is, the curse she never knew she carried, and why Max wanted her, not just her family. Because Lucy's story didn't start in Santa Carla. It ended there. Lucy Emerson seemed like the one pure thing left in a town crawling with monsters. Recently divorced, broke, and desperate for a fresh start, she packed her two sons, Michael and Sam, into an old car and moved back home to her father's house, Santa Carla, the so-called murder capital of the world. To Lucy, it was just a quiet coastal town, but to the vampires lurking in the boardwalk shadows, it was feeding ground. She found a job at a local video store run by a man named Max, a gentleman with perfect manners, a perfect smile, and a secret thirst. To Lucy, he was kindness after chaos. To Max, she was the missing piece. And that's the first clue to her hidden truth. You see, years before Lucy ever set foot in Santa Carla, her father, Grandpa Emerson, wasn't just some eccentric old man with taxidermy and garlic in his fridge. He was something else. In the hidden origins of Max and the widow Johnson, we learn the shocking truth. Grandpa was bitten decades ago by the widow Johnson, a vampiric woman whose blood carried an ancient curse. He didn't fully turn. He became a half vampire, caught between life and death. He lived quietly, avoiding sunlight just enough to survive, and keeping the family far from Santa Carla's cursed soil. But curses don't die. They sleep. When Lucy was born, a fraction of that blood passed into her veins. Too weak to make her a vampire, but strong enough to make her different. It's the reason she always felt a strange pull toward darkness, an invisible thread calling her back to Santa Carla. After her divorce, Lucy said moving back home just felt right. But what if it wasn't choice? What if it was instinct? Something in her blood responded to the call of Santa Carla, the town where the widow Johnson's lineage began. Her move wasn't coincidence. It was the bloodline calling home. That's why Max found her so easily. Vampires can sense the echo of their own kind. And Lucy's dormant bloodline sang like a siren in the night. Max didn't fall in love by chance. He was summoned. On the surface, Max wanted a family, a mother figure for his lost boys. But when he said, "I was hoping you and I could be one happy family," he wasn't talking about love. He was talking about blood fusion. Max's coven was weakening. Too many transformations. Too many failed feedings. But Lucy's bloodline, tied to the widow Johnson, offered something no vampire had ever possessed, a hybrid link between human and vampire blood. By binding himself to Lucy through marriage or a vampiric ritual, Max could have merged both lineages. The result? A new breed of vampire, one immune to sunlight, one that could walk among us unnoticed. Lucy wasn't supposed to be a victim. She was supposed to be the vessel. Even after everything, after her exposure to Max, after the bloodshed and the chaos, Lucy never turned. Why? Because her blood already carried the antidote and the curse. The half-vampire strain in her DNA acted like armor. It rejected Max's transformation, while still making her irresistible to him. She was the perfect paradox. Too human to turn. Too cursed to be free. That's why she survived when others didn't. That's why her sons, Michael and Sam, could be exposed to vampiric influence but still return to normal. Their immunity wasn't luck. It was her blood. After Max's death, Lucy tried to move on. But Santa Carla doesn't let go. And Lucy, though not on the front lines, seemed stuck. People in town whisper that she doesn't age, that she doesn't sleep much. Sometimes when she walks near the boardwalk, dogs snarl. Sometimes she dreams of a woman in white, whispering her name. The widow returns. It's the blood calling again. Her father's curse still hums beneath her skin. And deep down, she knows she can't ever truly leave Santa Carla. because she's part of it now. The curse isn't gone, just waiting to awaken again. Imagine this. Lucy stands on the old boardwalk at dusk. The wind howls off the ocean, carrying the faint sound of laughter. Young voices, the Lost Boys, echoes of the past. A chill creeps up her spine as she sees her reflection in a window. And for just a second, there's no reflection at all. Her blood hums. The scent of salt turns metallic. And in the shadows, a silhouette. A woman in Victorian lace, eyes like hollow moons. The widow Johnson. She smiles and whispers, "Your sons may kill monsters, but you, Lucy, were born from one." And that's when it hits. Santa Carla was never hunting Lucy. It was waiting for her to come home. Lucy Emerson was never just a victim in the Lost Boys. She was the living link between the human world and the vampire curse that haunts Santa Carla. Her kindness hid a sleeping curse. Her blood carried a whisper of immortality. And her story proves that sometimes the most dangerous monsters don't bite. They love. Lucy was not just a mother trying to start over. Some bloodlines don't fade. They whisper. Her father carried the widow's curse in silence, and through her veins it still called out, not for love, but for reunion. Max didn't find Lucy by chance. He heard her blood calling. If you thought Lucy's bloodline was dark, wait until you see who the widow Johnson really served. Watch the next video, Before the Sun Goes Down. They said Michael Emerson was cured. But what if the darkness inside him never really left Santa Carla? Michael was the heart of the Lost Boys, the older brother who got dragged into a world of blood, temptation, and night creatures. By the end, he walked away human, or at least that's what we were told. But over 3 decades later, fans are still asking, what really happened to Michael after that final night? Was he truly free? Or did the curse of Santa Carla follow him? Let's dig into the forgotten history, the hidden sequels, and the secrets buried in the comics that reveal the tragic fate of Michael Emerson. In 1987's The Lost Boys, Michael Emerson moves with his family to Santa Carla, a neon-drenched beach town crawling with vampires. He's young, lost, and hungry for adventure. Then he meets Star, a mysterious girl who leads him straight into the lair of David and his gang, the Lost Boys themselves. Michael drinks the blood of Max from a bottle David hands over to him, not knowing it's part of a ritual. He starts to change, stronger, faster, more animalistic, but not yet a full vampire. He hasn't made his first kill. The transformation is slow, seductive, and terrifying. By the end, after a blood-soaked showdown, Grandpa drives his truck through the wall, impaling Max, the true head vampire, on a wooden stake. Michael, Star, and Laddie are cured. At least, that's what everyone believed. But the Lost Boys never really ends there. The curse of Santa Carla never lets go that easily. After the events of the first film, Michael vanishes completely, both from Santa Carla and from the story itself. In Lost Boys, The Tribe, he's gone without a trace. No cameo, no mention. It's like he never existed. Instead, we're introduced to Chris and Nicole Emerson, the next generation of the same bloodline. They're the children of Michael and Star, now grown up and living far from the neon graveyard of Santa Carla. But the darkness they escaped didn't die with Max. When Chris and Nicole moved to a new coastal town, one that feels eerily familiar, they find themselves surrounded by vampires again. It's as if fate is pulling their family back into the same nightmare their parents barely survived. The story begins to mirror itself. Temptation, bloodlust, betrayal, and another almost transformation. History repeating through blood, a haunting echo of Michael's own fall into the night. So that leaves one burning question. What really happened to Michael in the years between those two timelines? Where did he go? And why does his family's curse refuse to die? So what really happened to Michael after the Lost Boys? The movie ends with him cured, alive, human again. But the truth is far darker. After Max's death, Michael and Star tried to live a quiet life away from Santa Carla. They married, started over, and had 2 children, Chris and Nicole Emerson. For a time, it seemed like the nightmare was behind them. But Michael could never truly escape what he'd been. The hunger, the strength, the pull of the night, it never went away. And the vampires never stopped coming. He and Star stayed in touch with the Frog Brothers, forming a small underground network dedicated to hunting down what remained of Max's coven. They spent years tracking stray vampires, cleaning up the ruins of Santa Carla's darkness. Then came the revelation that shattered everything. David never really died. The stake didn't destroy him, it only weakened him. Somewhere in the shadows, he recovered and returned. But he wasn't alone. A new leader had risen. The Black Widow, a powerful vampire queen who built a new coven in David's image. Together, they began turning coastal towns into hunting grounds again. Michael and Star went back to the fight. One last stand with the Frog Brothers. They fought like hell to stop the Black Widow's nest. But this time, they didn't make it out. The final battle ended in fire. Their car plunging off a cliff during a chase with the Coven. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't faked. Michael and Star really died that night, taking dozens of vampires with them in the explosion. Their bodies were never recovered. All that remained were their children, Chris and Nicole, raised far from Santa Carla, never knowing the full truth of what their parents died fighting. So by the time the tribe begins, the next generation of Emersons is left to carry the same curse. A legacy written in blood, born from the night their parents tried to end once and for all. Michael and Star's deaths should have ended the story. But in the Lost Boys universe, nothing ever truly dies. Not even those who tried to escape the darkness. Even in death, Michael's blood carried something unnatural. The cure that freed him after Max's death never erased what was already inside him. It only buried it. That half-vampire state, that in-between existence, passed down through blood. That's why the Emerson name keeps returning to the fight. Why Chris and Nicole, decades later, find themselves in another coastal town crawling with vampires. It's not just bad luck. It's inheritance. Some fans believe that when Michael and Star died, the curse didn't die with them. It spread. Their bloodline remained marked, haunted by the darkness they once fought. And every generation after them is forced to relive that same cycle. Temptation, corruption, and loss. Michael didn't become immortal. He didn't walk the earth forever. But in a way, his curse did. His story became a living echo, the tragedy that keeps repeating again and again through the family he left behind. Michael's body may have burned in that crash, but his shadow still walks beside every Emerson that came after him. So what really happened to Michael Emerson? Officially, he died a hero, fighting vampires alongside Star and the Frog Brothers, giving his life to stop the Black Widow's coven. But unofficially, he became legend. The man who once fell halfway into the night, only to rise against it. The first lost boy to escape the curse. And the one whose death ensured it would never truly end. Michael's story isn't just about survival. It's about sacrifice. He traded his life to save his family, and still couldn't free them completely. Because in Santa Carla, the night always finds a way back. To uncover what happened the Lost Boys Tribe movie, watch the next video on your screen. They say heroes never die. But what if one did, and came back as the very thing he once hunted? This is the untold story of Sam Emerson, the boy who laughed at vampires before becoming one. In 1987, the Lost Boys changed the face of horror forever. A perfect blend of teenage rebellion, rock music, and blood-soaked fantasy. But hidden behind Michael, Star, and David's chaos was another name. Sam Emerson, the wisecracking, comic-loving kid who kept the story human. What most fans don't realize is that Sam's story didn't end with Grandpa's truck smashing through Max. It continued until his fate turned darker than anyone expected. Today, we're uncovering the full story, from Sam's innocent beginnings to his tragic final transformation. When Sam Emerson first rolled into Santa Carla, he hated everything about it. No TV, no friends, and a creepy house in what locals call the murder capital of the world. He joked that their new home looked like something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But beneath that humor was a sharp kid, clever, confident, and obsessed with comic books. At the boardwalk, while his older brother Michael was busy chasing a mysterious girl named Star, Sam found something better. A comic book shop run by two weird brothers, Edgar and Alan Frog. They mocked his Miami Vice-style clothes, calling him a fashion victim. But Sam quickly proven he wasn't just another tourist. He rattled off comic facts, corrected them on Batman issue numbers, and earned their respect. That's when they gave him a horror comic titled Vampires Everywhere. They told him to read it. It could save his life. At first, Sam laughed it off. Vampires? Come on. Santa Carla was strange, sure. But that strange? He'd soon find out. One night, everything changed. Sam was in the bathtub singing loudly when Nanook, his loyal dog, suddenly attacked Michael. At first, Sam thought his brother had gone insane. But then, he saw it. Michael's reflection was fading. That moment, when Sam realized his brother was becoming a vampire, shattered the comedy of the story. Panic set in. Sam called the Frog Brothers for help, and they told him the brutal truth. Michael needed to die. But Sam refused. He believed his brother could be saved. And that's what made Sam different. He wasn't a killer. He was a protector. With the Frog Brothers by his side, he faced off against David's gang of vampires. Armed with holy water, garlic, and a crossbow, Sam fought through the night. And when one vampire attacked near the stereo, Sam fired his shot, impaling the creature and shouting his iconic line, "Death by stereo!" It was the moment Sam proved he wasn't just comic relief. He was a hero. When the battle ended and Max, the real head vampire, was killed by Grandpa's truck. It seemed like the Emersons' nightmare was finally over. But for Sam, the story had only just begun. 3 years later, Sam came back to Santa Carla. The town was still crawling with vampires, and the Frog Brothers were still fighting the good fight. When David's gang returned to finish what they started, Sam jumped back into battle. But this time, things were darker. He discovered that his grandfather, the man who saved them all, had been turned into a half-vampire, and the one responsible was a sinister creature known as the Widow Johnson, a seductive dominatrix-style vampire who turned the fight into a blood-soaked nightmare. During the chaos, Sam watched his grandfather die, breaking him emotionally. Fast forward 21 years. The Frog Brothers are older, bitter, and still fighting vampires. But Sam? He's vanished. Until one night, Edgar gets a visit. Standing outside the shadows is Sam Emerson. But he's no longer the boy we knew. Pale skin, cold eyes, fangs. Sam had become the thing he once hunted, a vampire. Edgar warns him to stay back. He doesn't want to fight his old friend. But Sam steps forward, smirking, and says, "Hey, I'm trembling." 2 years later, the truth finally came out. Edgar, now living in San Cazador, was shown holding Sam's treasured comic, Batman number 14. It wasn't just a prop, it was a reminder. Because Sam was gone, Edgar had been forced to kill him. Sam had turned into a full vampire, and Edgar had no choice but to end his life. He later visited Sam's grave, leaving that same Batman number 14 beside the headstone, a final goodbye to his childhood friend. That one image said everything. The boy who once saved his brother died as the monster he once feared. Sam's story is one of the most tragic in horror history. He started out as the audience's voice, the skeptical, comic-loving kid who made the vampires feel almost fun. But his life slowly turned into a mirror of what the Lost Boys was always about: innocence corrupted. From a boy mocking horror comics to a man consumed by one, Sam's arc became a dark reflection of growing up in a world that doesn't play by fair rules. The Batman number 14 comic, the symbol of his childhood and purity, now lies on his grave, a reminder that even the brightest souls can fall when the darkness comes calling. Sam Emerson's journey began with laughter and ended in blood. He fought monsters, lost family, and ultimately became what he once feared. But in doing so, he gave the Lost Boys universe its beating heart. A reminder that sometimes even the hero doesn't make it out alive. If you thought Sam's story was dark, wait until you hear what really happened to the Widow Johnson. It's right here on the screen. What if I told you? The funniest, quirkiest old man in the Lost Boys was hiding something darker than David, darker than Max, and older than Santa Carla itself. This isn't just Grandpa's story. It's the secret war he's been fighting since 1944. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on Elias Emerson, the man you only knew as Grandpa. Not just a taxidermist, not just a sarcastic old man, but a half-vampire, cursed in blood, locked in a decades-long fight against the creatures of the night, and against himself. By the end of this, you'll understand why he was in Santa Carla, and why that truck crash was no accident. Elias Emerson was born in 1918, rural Nebraska. Life was dirt roads, farm chores, and the smell of salt when storms rolled in from the west coast. His family whispered about sea curses from their whaler ancestors. But Elias, he laughed it off. Superstitions were for fishermen, not farm boys. He grew into a man of grit and hard hands, the kind of man who could shoot a coyote at 200 yards, and then skin it before lunch. That skill would matter later. Fast forward to 1944. Northern Italy. Allied troops pushing north through rubble and ruin. Elias's unit stumbled into an abandoned monastery. Walls blackened by fire, air thick with the smell of damp stone. Then she appeared, the widow Johnson, unnaturally pale, eyes like polished obsidian. She didn't walk into the room. She seemed to slide through it. She wasn't just a vampire. She was Tzimisel, one of the Pale One's brood, exiled from Eastern Europe decades before. She bit him, but didn't finish the kill. Something, gunfire, sunlight, maybe a moment of twisted mercy, pulled her away. Her blood mixed with his, enough to change him, not enough to own him. Elias woke days later on a beach, alone, his skin cold, his senses burning with strange clarity. He could smell the iron in seawater, hear conversations hundreds of feet away, and under it all, a hunger, a deep gnawing ache for blood. He'd been half-turned, slowed aging, heightened senses, smell, hearing, an instinct for nearby vampires. Minor regeneration, cuts healed in hours. But also, the curse. Under stress, the bloodlust swelled, almost impossible to resist. As he returned home, Elias faced a choice: feed on humans, or find another way. He chose animals. Taxidermy wasn't just a hobby. It was his cover, his lifeline. Every deerhead, every raccoon on his workbench had been drained before preservation, a way to take the edge off without killing people. And through it, he learned anatomy inside and out, turning his workshop into both a morgue and an armory. Every stuffed owl was a reminder: control the craving, or lose yourself. From the late 40s to the 70s, Elias hunted vampires across the US. He'd seen too much to stop, and his half-blood senses made him the perfect predator of predators. By the late 70s, his trail led to Santa Carla. The widow was gone, but someone had filled the void. Max, a head vampire building a network, turning lost kids into his own army. Elias bought a quiet house in Pagonip Creek, playing the role of the eccentric grandpa, all while watching, waiting. Elias and Max crossed paths in 1958. It wasn't a fight, not exactly. Max wanted him turned fully, saw his half-blood nature as a rare prize. But Elias couldn't be glamoured. The widow's bite had made him immune. That immunity made Elias dangerous, and both men knew it. For decades, the two circled each other like sharks in shallow water. When Lucy packed up her boys and moved to Santa Carla, her father said nothing about the danger that had been festering there for decades. Elias Emerson wasn't the type to frighten his family with ghost stories, even when those ghosts had fangs. But when Max, the charming video store owner, started courting Lucy, Elias knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't a love story. It was a recruitment. Max didn't want a girlfriend. He wanted a matriarch, a mother figure to complete his vampire coven, someone who could anchor his twisted family in the human world. And when Michael fell into the orbit of the Lost Boys, Elias recognized the pattern instantly. He'd seen it before. The grooming, the seduction, the slow erasure of a mortal life until only the hunger remained. For years, Elias had avoided open war. He had kept his weapons buried, his knowledge locked away, living under the radar. But the moment his grandson was targeted, the conflict he'd been dodging roared back to life. The infamous night of the truck crash wasn't just a lucky rescue. It was a calculated strike. That beat-up pickup rattling down the dark road was his last weapon. The bed was loaded with sharpened fence posts, cut and whittled over long winter nights. In the glove box, bottles of holy water sloshed against each other, each one marked with a hand-painted cross. When Elias drove through that wall and into Max, it wasn't improvisation. It was the final move in a chess game that had begun decades earlier, in a burned-out monastery in 1944, where Elias had faced something no hunter should survive. Elias Emerson is the only vampire hunter on record to take a direct bite and walk away without turning fully undead. He never spoke of how he resisted the change, but he carried the scars, both physical and in his soul. His fight was never about glory. It was about keeping the war in the shadows, so the people he loved could live in the light. And in the strange, twisted fairy tale of Santa Carla, Elias was more than a gruff old man with a crossbow. He was our Captain Hook, the villain in the eyes of the Lost Boys, but the hero in ours. The truth is, his battle didn't end with Max. And if you want to know what really happened between Max and the Widow Johnson, watch the next video on your screen right now. Before there was Max, there was her, the Widow Johnson, the real queen of Santa Carla, the one who made the Lost Boys possible, and maybe the one still pulling the strings. Everyone remembers the Lost Boys for its wild neon chaos. Vampires on motorcycles, Santa Carla's boardwalk dripping with blood and rebellion. But hidden beneath all that, there's a story the movies never told you. A story about a woman so old, so powerful, that even Max answered to her. Tonight we pull back the veil on the real ruler of Santa Carla, the Widow Johnson, a creature older than the town, older than Max, and far darker than anyone imagined. Before she became the Widow Johnson, her name was Isolde von Krostein, a child of privilege, born in 1721, Bavaria. A world of castles, candlelight, and alchemy. Her father, Baron von Krostein, wasn't just a nobleman. He was a man chasing eternity, obsessed with blood rituals and the whispers of ancient texts that spoke of immortality. He believed life could be extended through blood, and that certain blood carried divine rebellion. But when famine hit Bavaria, everything fell apart. Starving mobs stormed their estate. Her family was slaughtered in the streets, ripped apart by the very people they once ruled. And Isolde, broken and bleeding, crawled through the snow, the screams of her family still echoing behind her. That's when it came, a figure that didn't cast a shadow. Skin like marble, eyes like embers beneath ice. It called itself Brahm, the first rebel, the first philosopher of blood. He wasn't just a vampire. He was the origin of rebellion itself, one of Cain's first children, the bloodline that defied both God and clan. He spoke to her not as a monster, but as a teacher, a fallen scholar of the Brusha, the ancient clan born in Mesopotamia 4,000 years before her birth. He told her of his kind, vampires who once sought enlightenment but fell to chaos, Philosophers turned anarchists. Thinkers turned warriors. Those who fought against order, against heaven, against even their own kind. And in her despair, Isolde listened. He offered her a contract, not of mercy, but of rebellion. Vengeance against the world that had destroyed her. Power beyond mortality, fueled by strength, charisma, and speed. The gifts of the Bruja. But he warned her, once she drank his blood, she would never kneel again. Not to man, not to God, not even to him. And she said yes. That night, Isolde von Krostein died, and the widow Johnson was born, the first Bruja exile in the New World, a creature of passion, fury, and eternal grief. The Pale One's legacy made flesh, the child of rebellion carrying the blood of Braham himself. She would burn across centuries, philosopher turned predator, carrying the Bruja fire into the heart of Santa Carla. For centuries, she wandered across Europe. Every few decades, a new name, a new husband, a new feeding ground. She'd marry into power, drain it dry, and disappear before anyone noticed the pattern. When she reached America, she hid behind her newest identity, the widow Johnson. To mortals, she was a grieving socialite. To vampires, she was the spider at the center of the web. She ran the Deadlight Club, a blood-soaked bordello buried under the cliffs of Santa Carla, a sanctuary for the undead. Every night, the waves crashed beneath her lair, and the screams of the lost echoed through its tunnels. This wasn't just feeding, this was control. She built her own brood of sirens and vixens, vampires bound by beauty, blood, and hunger. And when Max arrived, she saw potential. He wasn't strong, not yet, but he was loyal, and she needed someone like that. Before Max ever smiled at Lucy Emerson, he belonged to her. The widow turned him, but under one condition. He had to build a family, a patient, obedient vampire clan that would serve as her eyes and ears. Max believed he was in control, but he was just another puppet in her eternal play. While he built his family, she stayed in the shadows, watching Santa Carla decay into the perfect feeding ground. Every carnival, every concert, every missing person, it all fed her plan. And the real kicker, even the Frog Brothers' parents once tried to stop her. They were hunters once, but she got to them first, twisted their minds, buried their memories, left their children, Edgar and Alan, with nothing but instincts. The widow didn't just destroy families, she rewrote them. And in the movie, Grandpa Emerson keeps joking about going to visit the widow Johnson. But that wasn't a joke. It was a confession hiding in plain sight. Because the truth is, she turned him too. Every night he drove out into the dark. It wasn't for errands or late-night fishing. He was hunting her, the one who cursed his blood. The widow wasn't just someone he knew. She was the reason he could never truly die. After the Lost Boys movie ends, Grandpa Emerson leads a raid on her lair. They find her true nest, a cathedral of decay, full of the undead she's created over the centuries. But when they finally face her, she changes. Her face peels, her bones crack, and she reveals her real form, a thing not meant for daylight, part human, part shadow, part something older. Grandpa fights her and dies by her hands. And even as the flames consume her lair, no one ever finds her body, because she doesn't die. She waits. Everyone thought Max was the big bad, the leader of the Lost Boys. But Max was only ever a front, a mask. The true ruler of Santa Carla was the widow Johnson. Every whisper in the boardwalk shadows, every vampire that rose after the 80s, they all trace back to her. Even the so-called new tribes of vampires in later sequels, all connected to the pale bloodline. Her bloodline. Santa Carla wasn't cursed by accident. It was her feeding ground, her design. She was the first spider in the web, and the web is still alive. So maybe the truth isn't that Santa Carla creates monsters. Maybe it calls them back. Maybe every time the lights flicker on that pier, or the wind howls through those caves, it's her, the widow Johnson, remembering the promise she made in the snow over 200 years ago. The promise to never die, and to never stop feeding. Watch the next video to learn how Grandpa Emerson encountered Widow Johnson for the first time. Max wasn't the monster. He was the pawn, and the real evil. She's still out there, waiting. You think the story ended with Max's death? Think again. What the Lost Boys didn't show you, what the movie never dared explain, is that Max wasn't the true puppet master. He was being watched, used, even cursed by something older, something ancient. This is the secret origin of Santa Carla's vampire king and the Black Widow who made him. Max Lawrence, the quiet video store owner, the guy who smiled too wide and moved too slowly. He played the long game. He dated Lucy. He charmed her kids. He passed every vampire test because he'd been invited in. But behind that friendly face was the man who made the Lost Boys. He was the head vampire, the one orchestrating everything from behind the video counter. His goal, not power, but family. He wanted Lucy to become a vampire mother, Michael and Sam as vampire sons, a perfect, eternal family, something he never had in life. But when Grandpa drove that truck through the house and killed Max, everything ended. Right? No, that was just the surface layer. Before there was Max, there was Isolde von Kreuzstein, later known only as Widow Johnson. She wasn't born a monster. She was born into wealth in Bavaria, 1721. The daughter of a nobleman obsessed with blood experiments, proto-vampirism, alchemical immortality. But when a famine hit, her family was dragged into the streets by starving mobs and slaughtered. That night, something came to her. The Pale One, a thing older than vampires, who offered her a contract, revenge, in exchange for something darker. She said yes, and so the widow was born, forever mourning, forever feeding. She crossed the ocean under false names. Every century, a new husband, a new victim, a new veil, and eventually, a new pet, Max. Maxwell Lawrence, born 1890 in Boston, failed banker, lonely man. By the 1930s, he had nothing. He drifted west and got swept up in an occult group in San Francisco. They called themselves the Children of the Veiled Mother. At a masquerade ball in 1938, he met her. She wasn't just the center of the room, she was the gravity. And when Max begged for a new life, she gave it to him, but not without a leash. You will build your brood not with power, but with patience. If you fail, your blood is mine. That's why Max was slow, careful, deliberate. He wasn't just building a family. He was trying to prove himself worthy of keeping his soul. By the 1960s, Max moved to Santa Carla, a town the widow had been influencing for decades. They made a deal. Max would run the vampire gang in the open, the Lost Boys. She would run the Deadlight Club, a blood bordello under the cliffs. Together they'd keep Santa Carla in check. The Frog Brothers' parents, failed vampire hunters. They tried to kill the widow, but she twisted their memories, cursed their minds, and left only their kids with a spark of instinct. The whole town was infected. Some just didn't know it yet. But Max got greedy. He wasn't supposed to turn Lucy. She wasn't part of the plan. He broke the widow's rule, tried to make a family without her blessing. That was the final straw. The widow summoned bloodlines older than Max from Europe. Quiet shadows started arriving in Santa Carla, watching, listening. Max panicked. He pushed David and the gang to get reckless, chaos to cover his real move. But someone else was watching too. Grandpa Emerson? Yeah, he wasn't just some weird taxidermy-loving old man. He'd met the widow during World War II, been half-turned, cursed with a sliver of her blood. He came to Santa Carla not to visit, but to monitor. When he realized the widow and Max were targeting his family, something broke inside him. That's why he crashed that truck. He wasn't saving the day. He was cutting the leash. Max was never the real villain. He was a man who made a deal to never be alone again and paid for it with his soul. The real villain, Widow Johnson, is old. The original spider, still alive, still watching. And Santa Carla? That was never Max's town. It was hers. Max didn't create the Lost Boys on his own. He was turned by a much older vampire. The widow, born Isolde von Kreuzstein, made a pact with darkness after her family's death. She turned Max with a condition: build a patient, loyal vampire family, or lose everything. Santa Carla was a carefully managed vampire playground. Max's desire to form his own perfect family broke the truce, leading to his death. Grandpa wasn't just a quirky old man. He was part of the widow's web, until he turned against her. The true head vampire has never been killed, and maybe she never will be. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and also watch the next video, as we unfold more dark horrors from across folklore to fiction. They weren't superheroes. They were two teenage comic book nerds who actually believed vampires were real, and then proved it. Tonight, we're going deep into the story of Edgar and Alan Frog, the legendary vampire hunters from the Lost Boys. From their mysterious origins in Santa Carla's boardwalk comic shop, to their tragic downfall in the sequels and comics, this is the dark and forgotten journey of the Frog Brothers, and what really happened after the credits roll. Because what started as a teenage fantasy ended in blood, betrayal, and loss. Long before vampires haunted the streets of Santa Carla, two brothers, Edgar and Alan Frog, spent their childhood tucked away inside their parents' tiny comic book shop on the boardwalk. But for them, comics weren't just stories. They were manuals for survival. While other kids were out skateboarding or chasing girls, the frogs were reading every page of vampires everywhere and destroy all vampires, like sacred texts, memorizing every rule, every weakness, every way to kill the undead. Their parents? Barely around, always off traveling, chasing adventures that didn't include their kids. That left Edgar and Alan to fend for themselves and to run the shop. But their grandparents, they were different. They knew the truth about Santa Carla. They'd seen the town before it turned into a tourist trap, back when the old hotel still stood above the cliffs before it collapsed into the earth after the great earthquake. They were there the night David, Max, and the Lost Boys first began to feed, as the sunken hotel became a crypt for the damned. The brothers grew up on those whispered stories, tales of missing workers, strange shadows moving beneath the boardwalk, the smell of blood after the fog rolled in. Their parents laughed it off. "Oh, ghost stories," they said. But the frogs listened, and they believed. By the time they were 13, they weren't kids anymore. They were soldiers, armed with wooden stakes, comic book knowledge, and a burning sense of duty to protect Santa Carla from the monsters no one else dared to see. That summer, the Emerson family moved into town. Sam Emerson, the younger brother, stumbled into the Frogs comic store and laughed off their warnings about vampires. But the Frogs weren't joking. They handed Sam a comic and told him it could save your life. When Sam's brother Michael fell under the spell of David's vampire gang, Sam turned to the Frogs for help. And for the first time, the brothers had a real mission. Inside the vampire's lair, hanging from the cave ceiling like bats, the Frogs crept forward, trembling but ready. Edgar drove a stake straight into one vampire's heart. It screamed, and all hell broke loose. The gang woke up. The Frogs barely escaped with their lives. That night, the battle for the Emerson house began. Wooden stakes, holy water, garlic baths, and a dog named Nanook that saved the day. By sunrise, the vampires were dead. The leader, Max, was impaled through the heart. And the Frogs stood victorious, young, cocky, and fearless. They believed they'd won the battle, but really, it was just the beginning of a much bigger war. The Frogs didn't stop hunting. They carried their crusade across America, from the neon-lit boardwalks of California to the rain-soaked rooftops of Washington, D.C. But one mission changed everything. On a cold night, Alan Frog was captured and forced to drink vampire blood from one of the Widow Johnson Blood Bordello's vampires. He didn't just fall. He was dragged into darkness. He became a half-vampire, caught between two worlds, forced to feed on animal blood just to survive. And the brothers, they were torn apart. Edgar driving forward, Alan disappearing into the shadows. Their bond, the only family they'd ever truly had, shattered. Fast forward 20 years after Santa Carla. Edgar Frog lives alone in a trailer beside the sea in Luna Bay. Crosses nailed to the walls, garlic hanging from windows, stakes stacked like museums of memory. He's reduced to paranoia and poverty, shaping surfboards by day while hunting monsters by night. Then a young man named Chris Emerson moves in with his sister Nicole. Yes, that Emerson family again. Nicole falls for Shane Powers, charming surfer guy under the neon waves, who of course turns out to be a vampire. She drinks his blood, becomes one of them. When Edgar finds her, he doesn't hesitate. He lifts his surfboard like a club, ready to end this. But Chris intervenes, pleading for a chance to save her. So together, they dive into the old mine tunnels. In the darkness, Edgar and Chris slaughter Shane's gang. Chris slices Shane's head off. Nicole is saved, but the cost is steep, because right after that victory, Edgar is forced to face a nightmare far worse than any vampire. His old friend, Sam Emerson, has become one of them, turned by David himself, seeking revenge for the Lost Boys' slaughter. The perfect vengeance. And Edgar, he has no choice. He has to kill him. It destroys Edgar, takes away the last piece of his childhood. A triumph, maybe, a victory, hardly. Because when you hunt monsters long enough, you become haunted by them. A few years later, when we track down Edgar again, he's a broken man, living on scraps, haunted by the faces of the people he couldn't save. A woman named Gwen Lieber hires him to save her brother Peter, kidnapped by a vampire DJ named DJ X, who plans to spike his raves with vampire blood and turn the entire crowd into the undead. Edgar doesn't want the job. He's tired. He's broke. And his brother Alan, still cursed, but Edgar needs the money. And deep down, he can't stop fighting. He's the last of the Frog Brothers. He builds a team. Gwen, a washed-up reality TV star named Lars, and his cameraman. But the mission goes to hell. Lars dies. Edgar's wounded. At the final rave, DJ X unleashes chaos. Hundreds of people drinking vampire blood under the blood moon. Just when Edgar's about to die, Alan returns. The brothers fight side by side one last time. They blow up DJ X using a resin grenade stolen from Area 51. But nothing goes as planned, because DJ X wasn't the real head vampire. Peter Lieber, the man they thought they were rescuing, was. And Gwen, she was helping him all along. Peter kills Gwen and tries to recruit Edgar as his personal vampire assassin. When Edgar refuses, Peter uses his power to make Alan attack his own brother. It's brother against brother, hunter versus half vampire. In a desperate move, Edgar splashes Peter with water and blesses it mid-air, turning it into holy water. Peter burns alive. Alan collapses, and when the smoke clears, he's human again. For the first time in years, the Frog Brothers step into the sunlight together. Alan smiles and says, "Feels good to get a tan again." But deep down, Edgar knows the war will never really end. The frogs were pulled into new battles, new vampires, new monsters, always returning to the same cursed boardwalk where it all began. But something had changed. They weren't kids anymore. They were relics of a war no one believed in. Their story became legend, a mix of campfire tales, cult nostalgia, and blood-soaked redemption. Edgar and Alan Frog started out as two nerdy teens reading vampire comics and ended up living inside one. Their legacy isn't just about killing vampires. It's about obsession, loyalty, and what it costs to keep fighting when everyone else has moved on. Because in the world of the Lost Boys, the monsters never really die. They just wait for nightfall. The Frog Brothers began as comic relief and ended as tragic heroes. They were the soul of the Lost Boys universe, proof that even the smallest heroes can fight back against the darkness. But in doing so, they lost everything. If you thought the Frog Brothers story was dark, wait till you see what really happened to Sam Emerson. Watch the next video. They said vampires rule the night. But what if the devil's watchdog was guarding their sleep? In The Lost Boys, one creature lurks in the shadows, almost forgotten, yet he may be the most terrifying of them all. Tonight, we're digging into Thorn, the so-called Hound of Hell, a beast that wasn't just a guard dog in The Lost Boys, but a living echo of one of the oldest horrors in human mythology. By the end of this video, you'll know why Thorn may not just be Max's pet, but the truest monster in Santa Carla. Thorn appears only a handful of times. He's Max's guard dog, a big, imposing white German shepherd. On the surface, he's just a pet. But the way Thorn is framed on screen tells another story. He snarls. He hunts Lucy down when she gets too close to Max's secret. He stands watch during the day, guarding the vampire's lair. This isn't just a dog acting tough. Thorn plays the role of something darker. For centuries, cultures around the world told stories of supernatural dogs tied to death, the underworld, and demons. In Norse mythology, there's Garma, a blood-stained hound who guards the gates of hell. In English folklore, the Black Shuck, a massive, ghostly dog with burning eyes, was said to stalk lonely travelers. In Greek legend, Cerberus, the three-headed hound, kept souls from escaping Hades. What all of these beasts have in common: they protect the darkness, they guard the damned, and Thorn fits perfectly into that tradition. He doesn't guard a house, he guards a coffin. Max's coffin. Here's the strange part. The movie never tells us what Thorn really is. Is he just a normal loyal dog? Or did Max turn him into something more? Can a vampire's power twist even animals into servants? Thorn blurs the line. He's never shown feeding like a vampire. But his aggression is unnatural. He knows who threatens his master before anyone else does. This mystery makes Thorn terrifying. Because if he's just a dog, he's proof that evil doesn't need fangs. If he's a hellhound, then the Lost Boys world is much bigger and darker than anyone realized. The most chilling moment in The Lost Boys isn't a vampire's fangs, it's a dog's. When Lucy visits Max's home, Thorn doesn't growl like a normal watchdog. He lunges, teeth bared, eyes blazing, not just defending territory, but striking with a bloodthirst that feels supernatural. Lucy barely escapes, stumbling out into the night as Thorn's jaws snap at the air, desperate to spill blood. This isn't random aggression, it's ritual. Because Thorn isn't just a pet, he is a hellhound, created, not born, and bound to Max's will. In vampire folklore stretching back centuries, masters of the undead often controlled animals. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Count arrives in England as a great black dog tied to wolves and night creatures. Across European legend, hellhounds were guardians of thresholds, protectors of graves, beasts that ensured no living soul dared interfere with their master's domain. That's exactly what Thorn is. He doesn't guard Max's house, he guards Max's coffin. He isn't loyal to the family who feeds him. He's bound by blood and shadow to the vampire who owns him. How was he made? The answer lies in vampiric lore of familiars. Just as a vampire can enthrall a human servant, some tales say they can bind animals through blood. A dark pact. A few drops from the master's vein, and the beast becomes something more than an animal. Faster, stronger, no longer fully natural. Thorn isn't just a dog anymore. He is Max's sentinel. His eyes glow with unnatural fire. His strength is amplified beyond reason. and his will is tethered to one command: kill for the master. That's why Lucy's scene matters so much. It's not just a dog attack, it's the film confirming a deeper truth about Max's power. He didn't just command the Lost Boys, he created weapons in every form, even in the body of a hound. When Max dies at the end of The Lost Boys, the film never shows Thorn again. The screen falls silent, leaving his fate a mystery. In folklore, hellhounds are never just pets. They are bound to their masters, cursed guardians who protect the threshold between life and death. Some tales say when their master dies, the beast vanishes too, dissolving back into the shadows. Others claim the hound remains, guarding the grave, chained to its duty long after the master is gone. So what about Thorn? Because here's the thing, David didn't truly die. His body never turned to dust like the other Lost Boys. So did Thorn. Thorn was never just Max's guard dog. He was bound to the strongest vampire in the coven. When Max perished, Thorn would have instinctively sought out the next master of power. And who was left, lingering between life and death? David. Picture it. A blood-soaked Santa Carla, the Lost Boys scattered, Max's empire in ruins, and in the shadows, David rising from the ashes, broken, furious, but alive. Waiting for him is Thorn, loyal as ever, his eyes burning red with something more than animal instinct. From that night on, Thorn wouldn't be a mere guard dog. He would be David's warhound, a living weapon. A hellhound with no leash, trained to stalk the night and tear apart anyone who dared challenge the last true Lost Boy. The legend doesn't end with Max, it mutates. And at the center of it is David, hand resting on Thorn's collar, both of them bound in hunger and vengeance. Some say if you walk the boardwalk of Santa Carla long after midnight, you can still hear it. The low growl of a dog, too deep to be normal, followed by the laugh of a boy who never grew old. Love this video? Then you're in for a chilling treat. Tap the video on screen to explore even more twisted tales and uncover the eerie origins behind your favorite horror cult classic. They said it was over in Santa Carla. But the bloodline didn't end. It just moved to a new coast and got hungrier. You think the story ended with Max's death and Grandpa's truck? Think again. Because Lost Boys. The Tribe isn't just a sequel. It's a dark mirror to the original. A new generation, a new town, and a vampire gang that's even more brutal. Because they don't care about families anymore. They care about feeding. Today we break down the secrets behind Lost Boys. The Tribe, how it connects to the original film, and why this new pack of bloodsuckers is even deadlier. Forget Santa Carla. This story begins in Luna Bay, a gritty surf town soaked in punk rot and coastal decay. A place where the ocean hides secrets and the cliffs bleed history. Two siblings arrive. Chris Emerson, former pro surfer, now drifting after the mysterious death of his parents. Nicole Emerson, his younger sister, trying to rebuild something resembling normal life. Their last name? That's no coincidence. Yes, they're related to Sam and Michael, the children of Michael and staff from the first Lost Boys. This is the next generation. But Luna Bay has its own predators. A new gang of vampires led by Shane Powers, charismatic, brutal, and completely unhinged. And guess what? He knows exactly who Chris is. Sound familiar? Nicole is seduced into the gang, just like Michael was. She drinks Shane's blood at a wild beach party laced with chaos and fire. Suddenly, her hunger awakens. Her body changes. She's faster, stronger, unstable. Chris, realizing something's wrong, turns to the only man still fighting vampires in California. Edgar Frog is back, and this time he's broke, bitter, and burned out. Living in a trailer, writing anti-vampire zines, and waiting for one last war, Edgar agrees to help Chris. But he doesn't do it for free. This version of Edgar is darker. The optimism is gone. He's lost his brother. He's lost friends. He's lost faith. But he still remembers the old rules. Don't invite them in. Look for the bloodline. Kill the head vampire and the half-turns are saved. Only problem? These vampires don't follow rules anymore. They make their own. Shane Powers and his gang aren't David's Lost Boys. They're worse. They surf in pitch-black water. They party in slaughterhouses. They burn their victims and laugh while doing it. They've got no patience, no long game, just hunger and chaos. They're what happens when vampires aren't led. They just feed. And Shane? He's connected to David. Some say he was one of the early Lost Boys, turned during Max's reign and sent off to start his own tribe. The infection never died. It just evolved. Nicole teeters between worlds. She hasn't killed. Yet. Which means there's still time. Chris, with Edgar's help, launches a risky plan. Stake Shane. Save Nicole. End the tribe. But Shane's not dumb. He's stronger than any vampire Chris has seen. He plays with his prey. He doesn't just want to kill. He wants to turn Chris too. That's the twist. Shane doesn't want Nicole. He wants revenge on the Emerson bloodline. It all ends where it began, on the cliffs above the crashing waves. Chris faces Shane, using a flaming surfboard stake in a battle that feels more myth than modern. Edgar, bloodied but still standing, takes down the others one by one. Nicole fights back the hunger and almost turns on her brother, before reclaiming her soul. The kill is brutal, messy, personal. Shane doesn't explode. He burns from the inside out, laughing the whole time. And the tribe falls apart like ash in the wind. But here's the truth. They didn't kill all the vampires. Edgar knows it. Chris knows it. Shane wasn't the source, just another branch. The root is deeper, older. In the final scene, Edgar warns Chris. This was just the second wave, bro. There's always another one coming. Which brings us to the final question. If the virus never died, who's still spreading it? Lost Boys. The tribe is more than a reboot. It's a blood-soaked sequel about inheritance and infection. Chris and Michael Emerson are descendants of the original Emersons. Shane Powers is a new vampire leader, possibly connected to David's gang. Nicole is turned, but saved before her first kill. Edgar Frog returns, jaded and damaged, but still the only true vampire hunter around. Luna Bay becomes the new battleground, but the war isn't over. The virus of vampirism continues, waiting for the next tribe. He killed David. He survived Shane. But in the end, Edgar Frog was never just hunting vampires. He was running from something worse. The third film in the Lost Boys saga wasn't just another sequel. It was Edgar's reckoning. Because this time, the vampires aren't just punks or thrill seekers. They're organized, armed, and they're planning something global. This is the darkest, most unhinged chapter in the trilogy, and maybe the one where Edgar Frog finally breaks. Today, we'll unpack what the thirst really revealed about the blood virus, the head vampire, and the cost of being the last one left. The thirst opens with something new. Vampires going mainstream. No longer hiding in caves or beach parties. They're using raves, designer drugs, influencers, to spread a synthetic blood virus disguised as a party pill called the thirst. The hook? Take the pill, become immortal. But behind the club lights and strobe-lit marketing is a full-blown vampire recruitment campaign. This isn't about feeding anymore. This is conversion. Years have passed. Edgar Frog is now a shadow of who he was, living in a trailer, hunted by debt collectors, still making vampire zines nobody reads. He's lost his brother Alan, who's been turned into a half-vampire after a failed mission. And every time Edgar closes his eyes, he's haunted by the fact that he couldn't save him. But he gets pulled back in when a famous vampire novelist named Gwen Lieber asks for help. Her brother has gone missing at a rave in Ibiza, and all signs point to a vampire named DJ X. Forget David. Forget Shane. DJ X is a new kind of monster. He doesn't ride bikes. He doesn't wear leather. He wears techno robes and speaks in viral sound bites. But under the strobe lights and synthetic bass, DJ X is ancient, powerful, and building an army. He wants to use the thirst as a modern vampire weapon, to unleash a new generation of vampires without the need for turning rituals or blood pacts. If successful, he could infect thousands overnight. Let's break it down. DJ X isn't just hosting raves. He's testing a formula. The thirst pill contains vampire blood. Once ingested, it binds to human DNA. It forces a transformation, bypassing the need for first kills. It's chemically engineered immortality. But here's the catch. Once you take the pill, you're a half vampire. But if DJ X activates the serum, you turn whether you like it or not. It's a biological time bomb. And Edgar, he's got hours to stop it. Edgar doesn't go in alone this time. His team includes Gwen Lieber, the novelist with a personal vendetta, Peter, a fanboy who grew up idolizing the Frog Brothers and wants to fight, Zoe, a rave survivor who's immune to the thirst pill, and eventually, Alan Frog, half vampire, living in the shadows, tormented by what he's become. The final plan? Infiltrate the rave, find DJ X, destroy the supply of thirst, and save the infected before it's too late. But this isn't Santa Carla. This is full-blown vampire warfare. The climax hits hard. Inside an underground bunker, rave-lit in ultraviolet, Edgar and the crew go head-to-head with DJ X's army. Neon-glowing vampires, fire-lit dance floors, flamethrowers rigged to holy water tanks, UV strobe stakes. It's campy, yes, but underneath the insanity is something real. Edgar is exhausted. Alan is losing his humanity. And DJ X, is about to unleash his final form. In the final moments, Edgar stabs DJX with a hybrid stake laced in the widow's blood, a secret weapon given to him by an old contact. DJX implodes into light and flame, ending the synthetic bloodline for now. Peter, the boy Edgar was hired to save, was the alpha vampire all along. Gwen knew. She used Edgar as a pawn, just to get close enough to Peter to complete the ritual. But Peter kills Gwen, revealing his true power. He commands the vampires to slaughter Edgar and his allies. But Edgar triggers a trap, dousing Peter with holy water, vaporizing the alpha, and undoing the transformation for the rest. The rave survivors are human again, but the damage is done. In the aftermath, Edgar and Zoe reflect on the cost. But Zoe? She hints at something stranger. I wasn't affected by the thirst. I don't think I'm exactly human either. A werewolf? Maybe. The next generation of monster hunting may be even wilder. The thirst is a vampire blood-laced party drug used to create an army. DJX is the puppet master, but Peter, Gwen's brother, is the true alpha vampire. Gwen deceives Edgar to get close to her brother, but is killed when her plan backfires. Alan Frog returns briefly to help. Peter is destroyed with holy water, undoing the vampire virus. For now. Zoe hints she may not be human, setting up a new supernatural arc. This wasn't Edgar's final hunt, but it may be his last one with a soul. They weren't always vampires. Once, they were just kids stealing to survive, until they crossed paths with a monster who called himself Vlad the Impaler. In this video, we're uncovering the forgotten prequel to The Lost Boys, The Beginning, a script that never made it to the screen, conceived by director Joel Schumacher and penned by Eric Red, the same writer behind Near Dark, a story that rewinds the clock to 1906 San Francisco. This prequel reveals how David, Marko, Paul, Dwayne, and Jasper went from street thieves to the immortal predators ruling Santa Carla's night. You'll see their first brush with the Vampire King, the tragedy that broke David, and the moment Max stepped into the picture to build a new nest. Stay until the end, because the ending changes everything you thought you knew about Santa Carla. The story begins not in Santa Carla, but in the filthy, cutthroat docks of San Francisco. David and his crew weren't vampires yet. They were just kids, pickpockets, street rats, hustlers. David was their leader, sharp-eyed and unshakable, even when the streets chewed people up. Marko was cocky but loyal, quick with a laugh that usually got them in trouble. Paul, quiet but deadly, always stood like a shadow at David's side. Dwayne, a strong American Indian teen with scars from his tribe and a taste for bare-knuckle fighting, was the muscle. And then there was Jasper, the fifth, often overlooked, but just as hungry for survival. David had rules. He wasn't heartless. When Marko stole from a man with a starving family, David forced him to give it back. His words cut sharp. "I'm not taking food out of babies' mouths, Marko." It was survival, but never cruelty. That code was what made David different, and it's why Vlad noticed him. Everything shifted the night a cargo ship rolled into port from Romania. Inside its hold were crates packed with dirt, native soil from a land thousands of miles away. and in one of those crates, a pale hand stirred. When the ship finally docked, the crew never left. The captain, the mate, every sailor was massacred. Their corpses hung impaled on the masts, a warning written in blood. The man behind it walked ashore in fine European clothes, a sharp white goatee and cobalt blue eyes that cut through the fog. His name? Vlad Tepes, a name whispered in history as the Impaler. And when Marko spotted a heavy gold signet ring fall from a corpse, the emblem of a comet engraved on its face, he had no idea he'd just picked up the calling card of a king. The Lost Boys made a mistake. They tried to rob Vlad. David pulled a derringer on him, 2 shots to the chest. Vlad barely flinched. He snapped Marko's hand like twigs, then disappeared into the shadows. The boys fled south, straight into Santa Carla. There, they holed up in a grand hotel perched high on the cliffs. Safe, or so they thought. But Vlad wasn't finished. He walked into the hotel dining room one night, immaculate as ever, and laid the 2 blood-soaked bullets on David's table. A warning. You can't kill me. Vlad wasn't just strength. He was charm, manipulation, and promises. He convinced the boys to help him retrieve 15 crates from the docks. Most held dirt, but one overflowed with gold and jewels. When a rival gang tried to ambush them, Vlad showed his true nature. He flew above the ship, impaling Lomax, the gang leader, and a dozen men on the masts. The boys had never seen death like that. Terror mixed with awe. And that's when Vlad began to reel them in. With $500,000 won through a rigged roulette game, he bought the hotel outright, installing the Lost Boys as its young lords. For the first time, the kids had wealth, power, respect. But it came with a price. Vlad's offer was simple: eternal life. He poured wine into a bottle, except it wasn't wine, it was his blood. Marko, Paul, Dwayne, and Jasper drank deep. David refused. Something inside him resisted the leash Vlad was trying to slip over their necks. The next morning, Marko and Paul writhed in agony. Sunlight peeled their flesh like burning parchment. Vlad cut his own wrist and fed them black blood to soothe the pain. They weren't boys anymore. They were vampires. Unlike Marko, Paul, Dwayne, and Jasper, David never wanted Vlad's blood. When Vlad poured the dark liquid into the bottle and passed it around, David pushed it back. He claimed he didn't drink, and when the bottle came to him again, he spat it on the floor. To him, it wasn't immortality in a glass. It was poison, and he knew it. But fate had other plans. Later, while trying to escape Santa Carla with his friends on a military transport train, David found himself caught in a brutal fight between the Marines, the boys, and Vlad himself. Chaos filled the car. In the struggle, a Marine sergeant rammed a rifle into David's stomach and pulled the trigger. The shot sent David crashing against the steel walls. Blood poured out fast, too fast. He knew it was over. That's when Vlad appeared, towering over him like a shadow of death. The vampire king knelt beside David, his voice dripping with temptation. You don't have to die. Ever! Join us! Yes or no? David's lips trembled, his life slipping away second by second. For the first time, he broke. He nodded. Vlad smiled, baring his fangs, and leaned in. The scene fades there. But when David woke again, he was different. The bullet wound was gone, his skin pale, almost cold to the touch. And when he glanced at the mirror across the room, there was nothing looking back, no reflection. Vlad made it clear. David hadn't survived by chance. He had been chosen. The Vampire King had deliberately turned him, binding David to his blood, ensuring the strongest of the boys would belong to him. It was the end of David's humanity, and the birth of the leader we would one day know as the ruler of the Lost Boys. David found something Vlad never expected: love. Her name was Anastasia Rostov, the daughter of a wealthy Russian family hiding in Santa Carla. David used his newfound riches to court her, dreaming of a life beyond Vlad's darkness. But Vlad was watching. To break David's defiance, he bit Anastasia and offered her to David as his eternal mate. She looked into David's eyes, horrified at what he had become, and chose death instead. She hurled herself from the cliff, her body impaled on the wooden pylons below. David's heart turned to stone that night. And then, the confrontation came in the hotel lobby. David versus Vlad. But fate intervened. The ground shook. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake split the city apart. The Grand Hotel crumbled. Jasper burned alive when sunlight crashed through the ceiling. David fought Vlad in the ruins, shoving him onto an iron pipe that pierced his chest. With the quake tearing the ground apart, David forced Vlad's body up into a shaft of sunlight. The Vampire King screamed as his body disintegrated into ash. And the rubble David, Marko, Paul and Dwayne staggered into daylight, scarred but alive. And then a carriage rolled up. A man stepped out. Sharp suit, calm smile, eyes that had seen centuries. His name was Max. He revealed the truth. Vlad was his brother. And unlike Vlad, Max believed in patience, subtlety, and building power in silence. He offered the Lost Boys a place at his side, a new family, a future. David didn't hesitate. He accepted. And as two young busboys, Victor and Radu Frogieri, wandered too close, David beckoned them into the carriage. The feeding began. The story ends not with Vlad, but with the beginning of something darker. Santa Carla would never be the same. The hotel was gone, the city scarred, but the Lost Boys were reborn, bound now to Max, destined to rule the night. As one young boy, known later only as Grandpa, hiding in the bushes, as the new Lost Boys slaughtered the Groferi brothers, whispered, "Boy, oh boy, there's sure gonna be a lot of vampires in Santa Carla from now on." Watch the next video and uncover the hidden ties between the Lost Boys and Peter Pan's dark origins.